I'm tired of these Ultrakill rappers in the video, this internet. So I will make an Ultrakill lore video just for these people, for these dumdums. Wow, I'm so original. So enjoy the video, I hope, and don't love Ultrakill, and hope that video actually helps. Disclaimer: this video was recorded before Treachery came out, so I won't be fully up to date with this lore in 20 years. So, take it with a grain of salt if you ever see it after Treachery releases. Alright, so if you read at least Genesis of the Bible and at least a couple of pages, as in like a couple of verses, then you will probably understand how God created Earth and the mankind, right? But here's my summary for these dum-dums. God is alone. God make Earth. God make humans. God give humans free will. Humans evil. God angry. God make other beings. God fail. God make hell. God can't make it. So these were the first 3 testaments, which are on the secret world, so you can check them. And we can evaluate that God is most likely not all powerful because he cannot unmake hell. This, is leading to another thing, which we'll return to later. But, right, for this is like the basis, or the holy grail of Ultrakill. Hence why I'm telling you that, But, you're right. Next, or before God created mankind, God created angels, which were so cool. They were beings of pure light, they were so cool. And this is down to speculation, obviously, but I think the first ones that God created were Michael, God's wisdom; Raphael, God's strength; Gabriel, God's will; Phanuel, God's patience; and possibly Lucifer, which is possibly God's kindness, which is which is not a very trusted source. But anyway, moving back to the Testaments. Now God, having to face his embodiment of wrath or hell, go pretty sad, and that leads to conflicts on why the humans have to suffer. So God, such a loving and kind individual, he sends this guy, a present, which is to go to hell. Was pretty sad, and he gets pretty sad about it, and then he tries to kill himself, or it's implied, and he fails, which, is where he's not all powerful bit comes in, because he cannot kill himself, because he cannot destroy hell. What makes sense that they're about the same type of entity. And I don't know why some people think that God is dead, majorly due to Gabriel saying it in the second cutscene of the game, that God is dead, and therefore we should start, your point is wrong. And he probably can't kill himself, right? Let's be honest, he cannot kill himself because he cannot kill hell. So what Gabriel is saying is just blatant propaganda to support his ward and to actually not happen against the council. Now, right? Anyway, basically he leaves, or he's implied to leave. Yeah, he leaves. And angels are pretty messed up about it, and heaven is pretty messed up about it, and everyone is pretty messed up about it. So now, let's see what hell has like what presents aside from Lucifer. Well, they have husks, which are sinners, which are humans, which is pretty sad, right? So a husk is formed depending on how strong, how remembered this individual is, and how important this individual is, right? And that depends on what. So if we went to hell, we would probably be like what, like filth. But if, like, let's say the Lucius man is in hell, then he would become like probably the sign of King Minos. Speaking of King Minos is actually the largest husk ever. Pretty crazy, am I right? And King Minos, right, is also a judge of hell for some reason. I don't know, maybe because he's too big to be carried out on a punishment, but who knows? And he, was placed in a layer of lust. Now, King Minos, right, he believed the lust was not a sin because it is showing affection, a love to the person, and showing that should not be a sin. Which, angels probably wouldn't give a shit, right? They would probably say, no, fuck you, do your work, and pretty sad. However, because angels can't do that, because they're pretty messed up, Minos decides it would be a perfect time to start a renaissance. I think I said that right. So, what is it? Was renaissance? Well, it's when lust became from most likely a barren wasteland was a bunch of winds to a city, basically cyberpunk, which is crazy considering, it must have been like, King Minos probably was trapped and probably died like a few thousand years, which is pretty sad. Anyway, moving on, right? King Minos got what he wanted. The punishment is no longer carried out because don't you expect. And everyone's happy that they're gonna eat ice cream, right? Well, no, because angels unmess themselves and established a council, which was a council. And what do councils do? They rule. So when they saw, Minos' thing, they were pretty pissed actually, and sent Gabriel to kill him. And Minos, being most likely the kindest person in hell, decided to, try to reason with Gabriel. However, because Gabriel is so, I don't know, brainwashed, maybe, into, following the orders of the council, he kinda kills him. And now, because Minos was such an influential and such a wonderful figure, he formed a prime soul. Now, a prime soul depends on 3 categories, right? How strong-willed the person is, how influential they are, and how strong, how much status they have, right? And Minos had all 3, possibly, right? So he started forming a Prime Soul. But, angels caught on that and decided to trap him in a prison specifically designed for him, which was kind of like a mashup, probably, between hell energy and divine light. And they created this, which is pretty crazy. But, a prison is a prison. But to make it even worse, right, his punishment is now to sit in his corpse, right? And to make it even triple worse, his pet snakes, right, that we see, right, they are now his paradigm. And to make it even quadruple worse, he now, right, his corpse now kills people, which is pretty sad, honestly. Now, right, Minos is not the only Einstein here, because, down in green, right, down 2 layers, we have Sisyphus. Now, Sisyphus was a cherry little lad. He decided, right, that he had enough of this punishment, and he would rather die than continue this punishment. And when the golden opportunity struck, he, decided, why not start a rebellion? Now, obviously, Sisyphus knew that he most likely was not going to win. But he was going to anyways, right? And he gathered, husked, was, and it had, some sort of chemical activity in the brains and could actually think. And, decided to fight against Heaven. Which, Heaven was also pretty pissed about. And they kinda ambushed Sisyphus and killed him before, they could do something super duper lethal. Yeah. And Sisyphus was starting to form the Prime Soul because of his power and influence. So, Angels kind of freaked out because he was forming so quickly. So they decided to put a random generator and decided to generate literally a Timu copy of Fleshman Obstacle, which is just a fucking cube, which, isn't that strong, right? It could not hold on to Sisyphus the same way Fleshman holds on to Minos. Hence why, right, they put him 2 layers deep into heresy, and they surrounded him with a bunch of army that they could find in hell. Yes, there are some virtues, and yes, there are some idols, and yes, there are some fairy men. But, gameplay goes worse. And, he had to, if he went out of the prison and formed the Prime Soul, he had to go against them. Which, most likely, he wouldn't go. Now, skipping my interpretation a few thousand years to 1912, right? When Ultrakill's World War I began. And then first, it began as the trench face, the stalemate, everything, that. But some fuckface decides to, go, why don't we use water as fuel? So that was how gunmen went crazy. Which were the first bullet fuel machinery in combat, and they also were the most effective, right? Because they always needed to have some sort of a person on life support in behind to, give them bullet. Which, is a concept we'll return to later, but now gunmen were steamrolling the trenches. They were absolutely rolling them, and you know, people had to do something, you know, so they wouldn't leave it. And, you know, Germans came up with the idea to make a tank, which is rockets. Wow, so original, I know. But, you know, because we humans are so good at creating excessive machinery that we definitely do not use for this operation, like a few, like, decades, maybe a century, we created a fucking skateboard that can shoot fucking missiles. What is this? Electric hits, maybe? And they could destroy cities with like a hit. Oh my god, bro. Now this are Earth movers. Earth movers are so massive that they need not only one to fuel them, but also the sun, right? And because, you know, they were destroyed cities, you know, the most safest place you could find was on the, which, you know, wasn't the best, you know, place to live. Maximum because, you know, your Earth mover could get destroyed. I didn't even know. But, you know, after some time, V1 was in production. And, you know, it is like the peak of what humans would create. Not really, because I didn't actually said would come with. But it's still sort of creating it. And it would be like kill Earth movers because it's the counter to Earth movers. But because, right, they were destroying so many cities, and so many ash was formed, and so much ash was lobbed into the air, you know, cancelled out the sun. And without the sun, Earth movers started to die out. And, you know, V1 was no longer needed. Because why would you need a machine that kills a machine that dies? Why? And, you know, only one copy of V1 was made, which are we. But, right, now, people started to get a bit sad. They decided to make peace with each other, right? And, you know, they all united and made the final peace, right? And ended the final war, which, you know, lasted for 200 years. Well, most likely 200 years. Which is, you know, a lot. Now, right, did I tell you that hell was sentient? Well, I probably didn't, but there you go. And if you didn't get it from, you know, playing the game, and, you know, discovering this, and discovering this, and discovering this, then you probably, you know, are a whopper. Yeah, I'm gonna assume so. But, you know, hell itself was such a fanboy of the final war that decided to literally make a team of gunnermen, which are mannequins, which trap sinners. Which is pretty cool, I guess. But, you know, because of this dedication, right, to making and loving the final war so much, and thinking it's just the peak of, like, the human evolution, like, ever. They decided, fuck you. Right? And, you know, because they made the final peace, the new peace, they, right, hell itself got a bit sad, right, and started making fucking fanfics and fanfics and poems about how final war should be the end of mankind and how new peace is a fraud, hence why let's make an entire level, new peace. So, right? So, it was kind of sad. And possibly, who knows? Done something to humanity, something very awful. But, right? Humans made me too, which was a machine that could punch really hard, and it couldn't regenerate and go, but it had a thicker armor, which was cool, I guess. But they also made other machines like Ultrakill and drones. But right, then about hell, I don't actually know how. Like, genuinely, how have you implemented this? And because it's down Israel and everything down Israel is probably like first or something. People for some apparent reason thought it was actually a good idea to go down and fetch some wood, which was stupid. And mysteriously, mankind has died, and mysteriously, machines went to hell. Which, it was all because of hell itself. I can't even, who do you think it could possibly be? Nobody would ever kill mankind. Like, who? Yeah, who? Right. And one is most likely either one of the first machines or one of the last machines to go down in hell. And we are, right, the we fight V2 are, crazy conflict. Which, we defeat was pretty easy. And then, right, we kind of killed this guy again in green, but he gives us 2 arms. Oh my god! So, I could cry because of this. And he gave us nothing else. Punch very hard. And then we fight the Court of King Minos. Then we put our sleeper into water, even we fight Minos. Yes, we do fight Minos first. And we kill Minos. And he says that machines have already been to kill us, and already killed us. And, we kind of don't care. And then we go to kill Gabriel, but then we don't kill him. Because he's, the goat. And then, he's kind of a fraud in the council's eyes. Because he, didn't defeat us. And he was basically ripped of holy light. And he has 24 hours to live, which is pretty sad, honestly. Next, right, we go to Heresy, because we already killed Creed. And we fight Sisyphus, and kill him, for the final time in Heresy. And then we fight Gabriel, and he's very angry, right, with us. But so we still defeat him, and Gabriel, after realizing, what he has done wrong, and how he blindly followed the council, decided to kill the council. and show how there's nothing to fear. And then, most like then we descend deeper into violent to kill an Earth movement, right? Because hell loves Earth movement so much that it decided to make itself one. Wow, it's so kind of it. And then we descend deeper into fraud, where we, see this, and God, so cool, and we see, and then we see power providences, which descended down into hell, because Gabriel descended down into hell because he basically started the Civil War, almost. So hasn't actually happened yet. And Powers came in to also find Gabriel because he's like their teacher, and and we fight them, and then we fight Garion, which is a fucking bomb, and that's it for fraud. Or so I'm thinking. It was pretty short. I mean, I summoned it very short. Okay, so Act 3 isn't out yet fully, so we don't actually know the conclusion to the story, which is pretty sad, yeah, but, sooner or later we'll find it out. Bye, and hope you don't WAP anymore. Yeah.